This day honors the lives and the individuals and families touched by the Holocaust, and it was first officially organized on May 3rd, 1951. Tonight's speaker, Steve Koek, will be sharing the story of his father and late resident, Joseph Koek, who was a Holocaust survivor. Steve was invited to participate in the Holocaust Museum and Education Center in June of 2016, the summer after his father's death. Steve and his wife Andy and their family live in Naperville, Illinois, are here tonight to honor Joseph's life memory through Holocaust Remembrance Day here in the village of Niles. Please welcome Steve Koek.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to Mr. I knew I was going to mess up your name. Mr. Alpagianis. I'm so sorry for filling in for the mayor tonight. And to the Niles Village Board of Trustees for letting us take over your meeting tonight. I also want to thank the person probably most responsible for this evening happening, and really, from what I hear, really the mayor of Niles and one of my oldest friends, Edie Schulter. Thank you so much. Thank you also to gathered family, friends, and guests of the community. What a great crowd here tonight. And to those of you watching on Niles Community TV for the 12th time, welcome again. It has been said that it takes a village to raise a child, something that I'm sure has been said thousands of times in this very hall. And our section of the village of Niles that we grew up in Oakton and Nordica, there were some very special people that I'm sure those of us that grew up with took for granted then, but hopefully we do not anymore. So please join me in welcoming Aline and Ron's mom, Sandy Braver. Where is Sandy? Was she not here? Okay. And Tony and Lisa's mom, and my little brother Ken's second mom, Ivana Vella. Sorry. And finally, Edie, Rose, and Monet's mom, Carol Voss Ludlow. My name is Steve Koek. My father, Joe Koek, was a survivor of the Holocaust in World War II. He was a featured speaker for over 10 years at the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center in Skokie, as well as remote locations all across the country. He died suddenly in December of 2015 at the age of 85, exactly 1 month to the day before he was to share his story with the world at the United Nations General Assembly in New York for International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It is my hope to carry on his legacy and to continue to share his story so that you and the generations after you can continue to learn from his experiences and the lessons that he taught us all. Fortunately for me and for you, he left behind the transcript that he used to read from when he spoke to groups like you. I now use it as a guide through his story and will quote his very words through my retelling of his incredible life's journey. My father had two sisters who also survived the Holocaust and are still alive today. My Aunt Henny has lived in Holland all her life, and my Aunt Eva lives in Chicago, where she recently celebrated her 89th birthday. The three of them were among the hidden children of Holland. The Netherlands, or Holland, is a small country in Western Europe that before World War II had about 140,000 Jews among its population. By 1946, there were only 30,000 Jews left, about 20% of the pre-war Jewish population. My father was born on October 30th, 1930, in The Hague, where he lived with his family until World War II came to the Netherlands. His original name was Joseph Koek. Both he and Eva shortened it to Koek when they moved to America. But many people just knew him as Joop, from his family as a young boy to his adult kids so many years later. He lived a wonderful life with his father and mother, Philip and Katriane Koek, and his two sisters, the older Eva and the younger Henny. A proud member of the Dutch Boy Scouts, Joop described his family life before the war as a lovely early childhood, never thinking it could change. On May 14, 1940, the Germans went back on a promise not to bring the Netherlands into World War II, and the Nazis invaded. Soon, the Jewish people in the Netherlands were forced to wear a yellow star with the word Jew on it. The situation for all Jews in Europe, throughout Europe would only get worse from there. My father's words. On August 18, 1942, my family received a letter ordering us to report to a train station to be transported to a work camp. The next day, I am leaving home with a resistance guide. She is a total stranger, but we talk as she takes me to the end of the street, about 3 homes from our home. We turn right and keep on walking till we get to the home where I will spend the next few months in hiding. Being only 12 years old, I have no idea what to expect or what is going on. I do not turn around and wave goodbye to my parents. I do not kiss them goodbye. Looking back, now that I'm in my 80s, I am wondering what must have been going on in my mind, and more than that, what my parents must have been thinking. For years after the war, I punished myself for not dealing with our parting better. My parents hand over their children they love to strangers who they must trust. None of us knows what the future holds for us. We never see our parents again. My grandparents also went into hiding. My grandparents went into hiding too, and when the family did not show up at the train station as ordered, the Nazis went looking for them. They broke in and ransacked their home, destroyed all their furniture, and threw the rest of their belongings into the street by the trash. After they left, a neighbor picked up the photos and other items that had been discarded and saved them for the family until after the war was over. All of the pre-war photos you see here today exist only because of the quick thinking and generosity of that non-Jewish neighbor. The children wound up hiding in the top level of a 3-story home with several other children in hiding. The middle level of the building was the living area for the family who was hiding them, and the lower level was a classroom. My dad's words. We were strongly discouraged from even looking out the window. The roof had eaves, so it was unlikely that anyone looking up would have been able to see us, even if we stood at the windows, but it was too great a chance to take. So, we mostly kept away from the windows, keeping ourselves further isolated from the outside world. Just like his father before him, my father wound up being an expert tailor, as I'm sure many of you here could attest to.
Yes, the best.
But he could not knit, something the woman who ran the house they were hiding in would make the children do. This came easy for Eva and Henny, but not for Joop. And when he couldn't finish his daily tasks, the woman would lock him in an attic and make him knit all alone, all day. He would then drop his assignment through a small window to Eva waiting below, who would finish his knitting assignment and hoist it back up to him. When he presented it as his own at the end of the day, the woman would say, "See, I told you could do it if you tried." My father and his sisters were about a mile away from their home, with no idea whether the house was even still standing. They had heard their parents were betrayed, arrested, and sent away, but they were still not certain of their fates. My father's words. Soon I was separated from my 2 sisters also. Whoops. So sorry. Got ahead of myself. An escort from the resistance brought me to the train station where we boarded a train together. During the course of this very long trip, I changed trains and escorts a number of times. By the time I reached the end of the line, far out on the countryside, my original escorts had no idea where I had gone or what my new name was. A farming family in the north of the country took my father in under the pretense that he was a distant relative who had been sent to be safe, get fed, and live a better life until after the war was over. The couple created a brand new identity for my father and treated him as family. They enrolled him in school, took him with the family to church, and taught him how to work the farm. My dad's words. One day during the harvest season of 1943, I was bringing in a load of peas we had just harvested to the market. My wooden shoe got caught in one of the wagon wheels and I tripped and fell, breaking my leg. I was brought to the hospital and spent the next 6 weeks in the children's ward. On the second or third day after I had arrived at the hospital, the Nazis had a roundup. They marched into the village where I had been staying. For a tiny village, they were sheltering a very large number of Jews and other escapees. Every single person who was hiding and every single person who was sheltering them was taken to the front of the farm or house and shot on the spot. If I had not tripped and broken my leg, I would have been killed also. His leg healed, the resistance moved my father to Groningen and a few other places before eventually he wound up living with the family of a dairy farm director in the town of Oosterzee, where he would stay until the war was over. My dad's words. On the day the Nazis had invaded Holland, my host family had gone to their dairy factory and made a special cheese they promised not to eat until they were free once again. So, on the day the war ended, my host family and I cut up the 5-year-old cheese. Old cheese tastes great. Which probably explains why he would drive us up to Wisconsin to visit dairy farms when we were little. A book mentions my father as the Jewish boy hidden in the area where the factory stood during the war. He is also referenced in a 2002 newspaper article about the dairy factory buildings being torn down. The chimney from the factory remains to this day. The summer before his death, my father, my Aunt Henny, my brother Phil, and assorted other Dutch relatives visited the area and took this photo in front of the now famous chimney. People of the area say the chimney was saved to symbolically point up in memory of all who died during the Holocaust, and that it also remains standing to honor all who were hidden and saved in the area. Now, Eva and Henny had very different experiences after they were separated from my father in The Hague. I don't know the specific reasons they had for separating them, other than pure space limitations. But I do know that the resistance, or the underground as Aunt Eva calls them, was very organized, very smart, and very determined to save as many Jews as possible, and especially the children. All three of them, my father and my 2 aunts, looked to the resistance fighters as their heroes, the men and women who literally saved their lives again and again. And for many of them, it cost them their lives. After the war, my father and his sisters were reunited in a Jewish orphanage in Amsterdam. Aunt Eva recalls Joop being a member of a group of older teenagers they used to call the big guys, basically a harmless gang who would strut around the orphanage, bossing the younger orphans around. Doesn't look too threatening or menacing in that picture. When Aunt Eva left her native country for America, my dad told her that if she could find him a job there, he might follow her. About a year later, he did just that, getting a job as a custom tailor for a large department store in Chicago. A few years after that, he met Grace Chateau, a beautiful and delightful Chicago gal, at a Jewish singles dance in the city. The couple married in 1959 and had 3 sons. I am the middle son of that family. My older brother Phil is with us tonight from California. My other brother Ken also lives in California, but was unable to attend. Our family moved to Niles when I was a young boy in 1970, and Aunt Eva was a frequent guest, especially at special occasions and on holidays. And we loved her dearly. And of course, this day, I won the lottery to sit next to her. All 3 of us went to Niles South Grammar School on Toohey, and Niles North Junior High right next door to here, where a large, gentle giant of a man named Clarence Culver was the superintendent, well before the school was named after him. My dad owned and operated several different tailor shops and dry cleaning stores in the area, but his signature store, Joseph's Tailors and Cleaners, opened in 1981, just across the street here on Waukegan. It was in between Arby's Restaurant, which still had the best Caesar salad I've ever had, and Pankow Pharmacy, where I worked in high school and college for many years. It was also across the street from Lawrencewood Shopping Center, where I messed up my knee for life sledding down a hill that no longer exists, and where we used to go to dry cars at the car wash for tips. And it was also kitty corner from the public library, where my older brother Phil worked for a time. It doesn't get any more Niles than that. My dad loved the corn dogs in Niles days, and I could see the Ferris wheel from my bedroom window when it was still held at Lawrencewood. although I would never go on it. But that was just part of it. What he really loved about living in Niles was simply the stability and the acceptance it afforded him, for himself and for his wife and children. He took great pride in being a true citizen of the community. He relished the freedom, the family, and he did it all among neighbors who didn't even know the incredible circumstances that led him here. Neighbors who looked out for each other, no matter where you came from. That should be a great sense of pride to all citizens of Niles, from the past, the present, and the future. And even more for him than for myself and my brothers, and now for the public record, I will be forever grateful to the village of Niles for providing him with what he needed most. To him, Niles really was that all-America city it always claimed to be. My father got us all involved in scouting, and he was a proud leader of Pac 62 for many years. Mom was also a den leader. The meetings took place at the Niles Community Church on Oakton, just about a mile down from here. And of course, Aunt Eva bought all three of us our very first Cub Scout uniforms. In fact, the license plate on his car until the day he died was always BSA 62, Boy Scouts of America. And now, that license plate number is on my car. Thank you again, Andy. It is not surprising that so many of the people we grew up with in Niles, so many of the people here tonight, never knew my father as a Holocaust survivor. You just knew him as a nice man, a very nice man, a scout leader, and a good tailor with an interesting accent and 3 motley-looking kids. The people who saved and sheltered him and helped him begin his adult life specifically told him not to tell other people what had happened to him and his family. They told him that people would not believe him, and even if they did, they would not care. He kept that hidden children within him for most of his adult life, as he assimilated to a new country, learned a new language, and took on the awesome responsibility of raising a family, rarely if ever bringing up his experiences during the Holocaust the entire time he lived here in Niles. Over a decade ago, he heard a man named Sam Harris share his Holocaust story as his synagogue. He approached Mr. Harris after his speech, and when my father told him that he was not sharing his experiences, Mr. Harris looked at him and said, "You must. If not you, then who? And if not now, then when?" My father began speaking shortly after that, sharing his story and the lessons he learned to thousands of kids and adults in the last years of his life. I was with him on a trip to the Quad Cities on my 50th birthday, actually, when he spoke to 4 groups in 3 days, including a room full of military personnel of all ranks at the Rock Island Arsenal. Andy and I drove him up to just outside Milwaukee late in 2015 so he could speak to a group of kids who had not previously been exposed to the story of the Holocaust. It turned out to be his last speaking engagement before his untimely death a few weeks later. Being a member of the Museum Speaker Bureau gave him the unique opportunity to openly reflect on the separation of, and loss of his parents while telling his story to these groups. He was still haunted by their death and missed them dearly even after so much time had passed. My father's words. "I never got to say goodbye to my parents. Where are they? It is the last days of their lives. They are probably not together. I have no idea how much they suffer. I want to be with them one more time and talk to them. I wish I knew more about all they did to save our lives. I wonder why I am still living and able to tell this story and share my feelings with you. I am 12 years old and I walk out of the house with a resistance helper and I never look back. Now I wish I had turned around and waved goodbye, but maybe that would have been dangerous. I often think of my parents. I've outlived them by many years. I wonder why. Is it proper to wish my parents rest in peace? I hope so. I love them more than they ever knew. I still do." You see, my dad worked all his life to come to grips with what had happened to him during the Holocaust, to both him and his family. But by the time he reached the twilight of his long and impactful life, the chance to share his incredible story, receive recognition and adoration from the people at the museum, and people just like you who listened to him. Help to bring him out of hiding and face the horrors of the Holocaust head on, and allow him to continue to share his story in hopes of preventing these sorts of human atrocities in the future. At the time of his death, Joe Koek was not one of the hidden children. Joop was free at last. I want to thank all of you so much for coming tonight. It is a true honor for me to share my father's story and represent my family in this profound way, especially tonight. My father ended his speeches with some final thoughts that I would like to share with you as I end my presentation tonight. My father's words. What the story of the Holocaust tells us is that there are people who hate other people so much that they will kill them, only because they believe different things or look different. My story tells us that there are also people who will do anything to save others, including risking their own lives. My wish is that you will grow up and belong to the second group. Thank you.
Steve, Mrs. Braver just arrived.
Oh,
Our neighbor
Aileen and Ron's mom, Sandy Braver.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. And then do you, the proclamation and the.
Do you want that question and answer?
No.
At this moment, I would like to read to you the proclamation prepared by the Village of Niles for the Holocaust Remembrance Day, April 12, 2018. Whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments. And whereas, let us remember a longtime resident, successful business owner, and respected scout leader who raised his family in Niles from 1970 to 1987, Joe Koek and the Koek family, Philip and his wife Denise, Steve and his wife Andy, Kenneth and his wife Sheila, and Joe's 8 grandchildren. And whereas Joe Koek and his 2 sisters, Eva and Henny, were hidden children in the Netherlands and survived the Nazi invasion, while their parents were captured and killed in concentration camps at Auschwitz. And whereas Joe Koek married Grace Chateau and with their 3 sons moved from Chicago to Oakton and Nordica in Niles on May 1st, 1970, and after operating several cleaning stores in the area, opened Joseph Cleaners and Tailors at 7954 North Waukegan Road in June 1981. And whereas Joe Koek raised his family with community pride and national patriotism and probably served as a Cub Scout leader for Niles Pack 62. And whereas Joe Koek was a true citizen of Niles with a unique sense of freedom and lived safely among a community accepting and welcoming of neighbors of all kinds. Now, therefore, Mayor Andrew Shabillo and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Niles do hereby proclaim April 12, 2018 as Holocaust Remembrance Day in the Village of Niles in memory of the victims of the Holocaust, especially Philip and Katarine. No. Koek. I don't want to try that. I saw what you did to me. And in honor of all the survivors, especially Joe Koek, Ava Koek, Henry Schwab, and do hereby dedicate Oakton Street in Nordica as Joe Koek Way, dated this 27th day of March, 2018. At this moment, if I could ask the family to join us up front here for a moment. We have something a little special for you as well. And I would like all the board members to come up with, please. This sign will be going up right here on the northeast corner of Oakton and Nordica. Tomorrow morning, our Public Works Department will be placing that sign up there. Thank you so much.
Welcome home. Welcome home.
Folks, if we could all come down real quick, we're going to present them with the proclamation. And yeah. At this moment, I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess in case people want to gather and/or leave the boardroom. I know there's a lot of family members here.